This book was my inevitable ruin. What's up guys, my name's Hayden Murphy and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing This Inevitable Ruin by Matt Dinniman. This is the 7th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. And if you couldn't tell from the thumbnail already, you should probably know this book was not a fun read.
If it's not fun, why bother?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've done a book review video, probably about a month, and the reason why is because of this book right here. This book is to blame as to why I have not put out that many book review videos lately, because I've been stuck trying to get through this. It's been such a huge slog. Oh my gosh. I gotta say, it was so incredibly frustrating reading this book more than any other book in the series, and for multiple reasons. I'll just say right out the gate, this book does have some of the biggest consequential actions and events happening in this book that does not just affect the game, but it affects the universe at large, which is why it's even more frustrating that this book should have been way better than what it was. The culmination of all these plot lines and these building blocks were leading to this book, to this level, the dungeon level that they're on in this. I mean, my excitement was raising with every book I was going through, to the point where the last book I just read, The Eye of the Bedlam Bride, was my favorite of the series. And everything that he just kept building and building was all leading up to this level, which was called the Faction Wars, okay? All the way from book 1, this should not have been as bad of a book as it was. It was an incredibly frustrating reading experience, to the point that I almost just gave up. But I kept pushing through and persevering, because I'm like, I've come this far. I've invested this much into these characters. I want to see if it will come to fruition at some point. Maybe it'll keep getting better. Maybe, right? So initially, the prologue of this book kicks off with a bang. I mean, some earth-shattering information gets dropped in the prologue, and I was like, holy crap, we're in for a ride. Unfortunately, it wasn't a fun ride, because it took about 300 pages into this book before I actually started feeling the momentum that comes along with reading a Dungeon Crawler Carl book. The books are so propulsive. The more you read, the more you want to just go. You don't want to put the book down. I've read the first book in one sitting, okay? Now, I've liked every single book. The least of my favorite of them is the second book, Carl's Doomsday Scenario, because that book is just all setup. There's not really much going on in terms of an overall cohesive story in that book, to where it's just setting up future things to be dealt with later. This book was supposed to be, again, the culmination, the tying everything up that he set up to this point in a nice little bow. Obviously, we know not every plot thread is going to get answered, because there's going to be more books going forward. But everything that was building up to this level, the Faction Wars level, was supposed to be this awesome, amazing event. To where the first 300 pages of this book, while stuff is still happening, it's a lot of info dumping. I mean, a lot of info dumping. I mean, I felt like I was reading a washing machine manual or something.
Do you need to fix the margarita maker? I read the manual for that too.
It was setting up a lot of the rules of the level. The problem with that is he started setting up all these rules that tie into this level, and it made it not fun, primarily because one of the biggest rules was that they were not able to use certain magic, right? Not any combative magic systems could be used until way later in the level. So the vast majority of this early part of this book is just, war tactics and moving around and all that, which I thought would be interesting all on its own. But it took away some of the fun of this series, that anything is possible, anything can happen. And while it does touch on that stuff later on in the book, it was a little too late, because I just droned through all this info building of setting up the level and all this stuff happening. And by the time it started building the momentum, I was like, okay, finally, this is where it's going to start picking up. And then it was just back to like info dumping. And it was info dumping while stuff was happening, to where the problem with this book is the pacing. It's not slow. It's the exact opposite. It's way too fast. I mean, I felt like I was in a race car. I felt like I was in the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves.
When I find you.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
Where we're just stuck on this bus and we cannot stop. We got to keep going till we hit that end point. No matter what happens, you better buckle up, Buttercup, because we are hitting this full on pedal to the metal, no brakes. We will crash into Grandma if she's crossing the street. No time to stop for anything. To the point where I was like, God, like, I cannot wrap my mind around so much stuff, because you had no time to rest and settle with any of the major information that got dropped. I mean, there was heavy, massive, game-changing stuff that gets dropped, and you have no time to sit with it. No time to, focus on it. There's hardly any character building moments until later on in the book. And while those were great, I'll touch on those in a little bit. Again, it took, way too long to get to that. And all the stuff that led to it just made it where you couldn't even wrap your mind around what was going on. I mean, it was ridiculous. The pace was relentless. I mean, really, really rushed, to where while you have the info dumping mixed with the fast pace of the book, you have where he doesn't have time to set up certain events in the way a regular novel would happen, or even in the way he's done in his previous books. Some event would be about to happen, a major event, and then they would come in, or Carl would just say, oh, we found out that these mob types work like this, and so we have to do it like this. Or, some major event would be happening, and they're like, oh, we are going to go ahead and add this and do this. Why? Oh, because this is how this works, and this is how this works, and this is how this works. Do you understand? Yeah. Okay, well then let's go execute. And you're like, wait a second. I'm just now finding out this information as to how this works and this works in order for us to accomplish whatever task is at hand. And you told me a split second before we go to encounter that task. I don't know if anything what I said even makes sense, but if you read this book, maybe it will, because I feel like I'm just talking a lot about, oh, this and that and this and that. But I mean, that's kind of how I felt about this book. Even our own characters, Carl, they're just like, man, I'm just so overwhelmed. It's like, that's how I felt reading this book, was so overwhelmed. And even the pacing was so frustrating, because one of the coolest moments of these books is like when they get new achievements, when they open new loot boxes, right? And you have a little bit of that, but there were even moments in this book where Carl's just saying, oh yeah, we got this and we got that. And you're like, wait a second, did I miss something? Did I miss a scene? Let me go back and check. Did they actually open these boxes or whatever? No, they just tell you after the fact that they did it, because he doesn't even have time for that. This book reminded me of a Transformers movie. The Transformers movies, while I like a lot of them, they're known for just having lots of action and crazy stuff, to where sometimes you're watching and you're just forgetting, like, I'm so confused at what I'm looking at here. What robots are these again, and what's happening? And it's just so much action after action, 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 action.
Don't you ever say that again.
That you're just like, okay, what is the story here again? Can we have a little bit of moment to breathe, right? Also, because of the pacing problem, and because there's so many elements happening all at one time, he was forced to do like the greatest sin, I think, when it comes to storytelling, is that you want to show, not tell. This book did a lot of telling. There was a lot of talking back and forth in the chat, because there's so many different groups doing so many different things at different places on the map or level, that you don't get to see it all. You're still seeing everything through the eyes of Carl, but it's being told to Carl through the chat. So you're literally you're discovering everything all through a chat message. And it became not fun to read, because, Lewis might be over here saying, oh, we got this encounter happening right here, and then someone else going over here, oh, we got to do this over here, and we got to do that. Oh my gosh, this just happened. I can't believe this just happened. And it's like Carl is just sitting there with a texting feed. Like, it's almost like if you realized, World War III is happening, but you're watching it in like a live update feed. That's how it felt reading this book. It got to a point where there was 200 pages left in this book. And I realized the problem of this book is that there actually was too many plot threads. As great as it was reading the first 6 books, and he keeps teasing all of these plot threads and all these things that are not satisfied, that are waiting upon this Faction Wars level, you realized it was almost too much for him to juggle. And I feel like he could have juggled it, but there was so much also introduced into this book that if you would have taken a lot of that stuff out, or if there could have been like a huge moment early on in the book that would have cut down like maybe some of the Faction Wars teams in half instantaneously, it would have allowed the narrative to flow a lot better. I'd be a lot more forgiving of like a monumental moment to quicken up the level early on, so that way the rest of the story could flow a lot easier. But, unfortunately, that didn't happen. By the time we got about to where it was 200 pages left, there's a moment that happens in this book, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say there's a moment that forces the story to get back to what it feels like reading a Dungeon Crawler Carl book. It removes so many of the other elements to where you're forced to only focus on a small amount of characters. Okay, primarily Carl and Donut, and a few others as well. So that while that is still an element of what's happening in the story, and while that's still something that's happening, you're able to get back to where it feels like Carl and Donut having to encounter a crisis and overcome it. Not, this person over here, and this person over there, and this person over there. It was back to what we've come to know and love of like a Dungeon Crawler Carl book. If I could just read the ending of this book, it would be great. Unfortunately, you have to read the first 600 pages to get to the end. Don't get me wrong, this book has some really great moments, really great sequences, amazing. But it's wrapped up in a not great narrative. It's like if you had a 3-course meal, and the third plate of that meal is one of the best type of food you've ever eaten. We're talking Gordon Ramsay level food here, like mwah, chef's kiss, okay?
It's pathetic!
But in order to get to that third plate, you've got to eat 2 crappy plates, like sardines and maybe some like day-old tuna salad that your grandma left sitting out for all day, okay?
Oh, that's nasty.
Like, that's what you have to eat in order to get to that great meal. That's what it was like reading this book. You have to get through all this slog of stuff and information and info dumping and them telling you what's happening over here and over there, but you can't see it. You're just going to get told through a chat till you get to the last 200 pages, and you're just like, wow, that was some really great, awesome stuff. Yeah, not very fun of a read.
If it's not a battle, where's the fun?
I know I spent this whole video pretty much trashing this book, but I will say, again, the last 200 pages of this book were pretty awesome. It does do a lot of cool things, setting up, stuff in the future, but also the greatest moments, emotional moments, which were lacking throughout the whole story, happened at the very end. And that was with Donut and with Katia, respectively, in their own separate moments somewhat, okay? But what they did with Katia especially was really heartwarming and touching. I mean, I really like how they brought both of those arcs together. And then even the things that Donut had to do in this book to struggle with, it was just really a great moment because it was the first time that the book actually got to slow down a second and focus again on the characters that we've come to know and love. Another great thing that made this book stand out and somewhat cohesively had a narrative was the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook. Like, in regard to how it ties together without giving spoilers, there are like little interludes spread out throughout this whole book that focuses on elements of the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook things that all kind of tie together and have really cool things. But even that, again, introduces elements that like right at the exact moment before a major event happened, introduces you to a character or a thing that you didn't know at all prior to, and then that very thing that introduced you to happens to be the solution that has no correlation to Carl or Donut or anything, that they just magically were able to just shoehorn right before the major event, and they magically solved their problem. So it was a lot of like that again. The other thing that worked in this book was the AI. The stuff they did in the Eye of Bedlam Bride that they introduced with the AI really gets to shine in this book, okay? My favorite moment of this whole book revolved around a scene with the AI because, again, it was another scene that felt like we got to take a little bit of a break, but also it serves two purposes, right? Carl and Donut and everyone else would not be able to accomplish or do a lot of the things they're doing now if the AI was not in the position he's in by the time you get to this book. So it serves a narrative purpose, right, to help our characters, but also the AI himself is becoming more and more of his own standalone character. And that's really the things that got teased at the end of the first book that come to fruition somewhat in this book, that I realized, like, yeah, this is where I wanted the series to go regarding the AI and things like with the character Agatha and all that, you know, and I'm like, I wanted it to get here, I just didn't like how we got there in this book. Yeah, I gotta say this is my least favorite Dungeon Crawler Carl book, unfortunately. I think I like it even less than Carl's Doomsday Scenario. Primarily because at least Carl's Doomsday Scenario, right? It was like 300 pages, it's book 2, it's setting up a lot of stuff that's going to happen, right? So I could say like, hey, it's still early on, I'm not gonna jump off here. But this was supposed to be like the culmination. I mean, the hype was real for this book, where Matt Dinniman himself was hyping up what was going to happen in this book alone, to the point where you were expecting a top tier story and you just got underwhelmed by it, right? So it's like, genuinely, I can say there's far worse things than I've read than this book, okay? But the things that disappoint me more so are not necessarily reading a crappy story that is genuinely crappy. What is more disappointing is reading a book that you know should be so much better and has the potential to be so much better. There's all the elements in there and it just doesn't work. And you have all this hype and built around it and you know it can work and it doesn't. When a book or a story or a movie has the potential to reach such heights and it just didn't get there, to me that's more disappointing than something that just is utter trash, okay? Because you expect the trash to be trash. I don't expect Dungeon Crawler Carl to be trash, and I'm not saying this book is trash, okay?
You talk a lot of trash.
I'm not saying you can't love this book. There's lots of elements to love from this book, but at this point in time for the 7th book, for us to be getting this, it was just, yeah, the pacing was off. Just, you know, too much plot threads try to being shoehorned into this book, and it was very frustrating, I gotta admit. But, all that out of the way, I will have to say, I'm going to be taking a break from Dungeon Crawler Carl. I will at some point get to A Parade of Horribles, okay, because I already bought it. But I do, as frustrating as this book was, I'm not going to give up because I have invested a lot in these characters. And I do think that the problem with this book, again, was too many plot threads that he set up. And I'm hoping maybe he learned from this mistake, that hopefully by the time we get to the last book, he won't have as many plot threads to have to worry about, okay? Like, obviously, there's still going to be some, I get that. But hopefully he can balance them a lot better than he did in this book. So I kind of see it a little bit as like a reset after the events that happened in this book, because he was setting up so much for this level that now I feel like, okay, he can set up some more stuff for other future levels, but I hope that he doesn't overdo it. So yeah, I think I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go and explore some other books, you know, date around with some other books, and you know, give Carl a little bit of a break. Say, you know, Carl, It's not you, it's me, man. I just need a break.
You're giving me the it's not you, it's me routine?
But that's enough of me complaining about this book. I'll get over it. I just need a little bit of a break. And I apologize for it taking so long to get this review out. It's just been very, very difficult for me to get through this book. And I had to push through and persevere. Yeah. But let me know what you guys thought. Like, did you struggle with this book as much as I did? Was it hard to get through? Maybe not. Maybe it was just my mental place I was in and it was just like hard for me to, focus. I don't know. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Go ahead and drop a like on this video and go ahead and subscribe because I will at some point get a Parade of Horribles review out, but I'm going to take a break. I'm going to have lots more book review videos out and several movie review videos because there's been lots of movies coming out and lots more coming in the next weeks. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video, and I'll catch you on the flip side.